Now, you have been reporting war crimes since 2014. In those 10 years, what have you seen?
When large-scale war started, we faced with unprecedented amount of war crimes, which means that we face with unprecedented amount of human pain. We document how Russian troops are shelling residential buildings, schools, churches, museums and hospitals, attacking evacuation corridors, torturing people in filtration camps, how they taken Ukrainian children to Russia, ban Ukrainian language and culture, how they abducting, robbing, raping and killing civilians in the occupied territories. An entire UN system of peace and security can't stop it.
You've documented so many instances of this. Is there one story that touched you most personally?
There are a lot of stories which are very painful, and for me, it's especially stories of children. And I have never interviewed children by myself, but probably I will tell you a story which was documented by my colleague. This is a story of 10-year-old boy, Ilya from Mariupol. When Russians tried to siege his city, they didn't allow International Committee of Red Cross to evacuate civilians, and that's why Ilya and his mother, like other people in Mariupol, hid in the basement of their building from the Russian shelling. They melted snow to have water, and they made fires to cook at least some food. But when supplies ran out, they were supposed to go out, and suddenly they appeared in the center of Russian shelling. Ilya's mother was hit in her head, and the boy's leg was torn. With the last strength, his mother took her son to the friend apartment. It was no medical assistance because prior to this, Russians deliberately destroyed maternity hospital and entire medical infrastructure in Mariupol. So in this friend apartment, they just lay down on a couch and hugged each other. And they were laying like this for several hours. And this 10-year-old boy, Ilya, told to my colleague that his mother died and got frozen right in his arms.
How do you carry on when you hear something like that?
I feel a huge responsibility because we document these stories not just for national archives, but for justice. And with all my efforts and efforts of my team, we are trying to return people their names, while this war turned people into the numbers. We believe that people are not numbers, and life of each person matters.
I've heard you've registered 18,000 individual war crimes. Do you have faith that all of those will see justice?
I believe that in 21st century, we can challenge the norma which we had in previous wars and human rights conflicts, because before it was obvious that when you have a huge an amount of crimes, the majority of people have no chance for justice because it's very difficult individually track each story. But now it's possible with the new technologies. We have a digital tools which provide us an opportunity to restore what happened, to identify perpetrators, to collect evidence, to communicate with people in the occupied territories, which we can't even dream of 30 years ago. So now, as a humankind, we can challenge this norma and set ambitious goal to provide justice for all people affected by the wars.
It's getting to more than 1,000 days of war. This week, there have been huge attacks on Ukrainian power plants. So you're on the verge of another winter, possibly without electricity. Can you explain what is it like to go through that for a third year?
It's very difficult to find the proper words to describe what does it mean to live during the large-scale war. Because while this war is going on for 10 years already, the large-scale war going for 2.5. Because to live during the large-scale war means that you live in total uncertainty. You can't plan not just your day, but your next several hours. You have no idea what will happen. To live during the large-scale war means you live in constant fear for your beloved ones, because there is no safe place anymore where you can hide from Russian rockets. Everything which we called normal life was ruined when Russia invaded Ukraine and broke to the hundreds and hundreds of pieces. But not to end to this pessimistic note, I also want to say that I would never wish anyone to go through our experience, because war is horrible. But these dramatic times provide people in Ukraine the opportunity to reveal the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make a difficult but right choices, and to help each other. Because only when we help in each other, we are acutely aware what does it mean to be human.
We've been discussing the latest speech by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on the need for more weapons. Now, there have been critics also in the Netherlands who say that this idea for more weapons is just pure propaganda, war propaganda, and fuel for the weapons industry. What do you say to these people?
I say that I can't stop Russian tanks with waving Geneva and Hague conventions. Russians killed unarmed. When Ukrainian forces push out Russians from Kiev regions, we sent mobile groups to Bucha, Motyzhin, Vorzel. We found dead bodies of civilians in the streets who lay scattered around its liberation. We found dead bodies of civilians in the gardens of their own households. We found dead bodies of civilians, men and women, with their hands tied on their back, in the mass graves. We found dead bodies of civilians, the whole families with children, in the cars which were deliberately shooted while they tried to escape. So let's be clear. Russians killed unarmed. These people have no weapons at all. And that's why I, being a human rights lawyer, I ask to provide Ukraine with weapons.
Can we just briefly, you've been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for your work. People in the West, again, openly discuss a ceasefire and a peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine. What would constitute peace for you?
Peace for me, it's a freedom to live without fear of violence and to have a long-term perspective. And that's why occupation is not a peace. Occupation is the same war, but just in another form. I know what I'm talking about because I have been documenting war crimes for 10 years already. People who live in occupation, they live in gray zone. They have no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their life, their children, their beloved ones. Occupation is not just changing one state flag to another. Russian occupation means torture, enforced disappearances, rape, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps, and mass graves.
Ms. Matviichuk, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bedankt voor het kijken. Vond je dit nou een goed gesprek? Vergeet je dan niet te abonneren. Een like of een comment achterlaten kan natuurlijk ook. Oh ja, dit gebeurde er de vorige keer.
Als je ziet welke hybride oorlogsvoering Rusland voert. Het is niet alleen maar die militaire dreiging aan de oostgrens. Maar het is ook, als het gaat in het cyberdomein, vitale infrastructuur. Ja, daarmee voert Rusland ook direct een grotere dreiging.